This is wrestling writer and historian Brian R. Solomon, and you are listening to Stu's Wrestling Podcast. I was the 100th guest on this podcast, so I think it's definitely worth your time.
You're listening to Stu's Wrestling Podcast. It's time. Your host, Stu Harmer.
Well, it's episode 111 of Stu's Wrestling Podcast, and my guest today is Northwest wrestler and the leader of the Violent Gentleman Society, Tommy Jackson. He is becoming prevalent on the Northwest wrestling circuit. He is the leader of the VGS with Christy, Quinlan and Payne, and we get to hear about how he developed his character during lockdown with the help of his wife. We also talk about the wrestlers that Tommy Jackson grew up watching and loved watching, including Benoit, Malenko, Saturn and Eddie Guerrero. We also delve away from the topic of wrestling as we're both Everton football soccer fans. And we've had a bit of a tough time in the league this year. We're still battling relegation to stay up. But yeah, me and Tommy are very passionate about Everton, and Tommy has a season ticket at Everton too. So, without further ado, my guest is the leader of the Violent Gentleman Society, Tommy Jackson. Enjoy.
My guest from just up the A55 in Liverpool on Merseyside, UK, is the leader of the Violent Gentleman Society. It is Mr. Tommy Jackson. How are we today, pal?
Very good, Stu. How are you?
All good, mate. Now, first and foremost, I want to get into your start in wrestling training, when it began, how it was for you initially, and then more latterly, we'll get into the VGS and the genesis of the VGS. But yeah, it's to do with you first and foremost, and yeah, your wrestling training and time frame and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I've loved wrestling as far back as I can remember. From being like a young child, like I was always, when Sky One was free, that was like my sort of first introduction into wrestling. Sort of Jake the Snake, Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, those sort of wrestlers were about and stuff, and the Slam Buddies and all that stuff growing up. So, but yeah, it was sort of it was around April, May time of 2019. A close friend of mine, Brian Aidenson, was training and wrestling and stuff, and me and my wife had a clothing range out to raise some money for the Haemophilia Society, which is our youngest son has that condition. We went to one of the shows selling some t-shirts and stuff, and he just said, "Why don't you come down and give it a go?" And I was sort of nearly 30 at the time, and I was a bit like working full time, wife, 2 kids. I thought, I don't know if I'll have the time to do it, but you know what, I'll give it a go. Went to my first session, couldn't walk properly for a week afterwards. It was pretty intense. But I think that first session is make or break to a lot of people. I think if you don't go back after that first week, you'll never do it again. And that was sort of, even all the pain I was in, I just thought, I've got to do this, and I really enjoyed it. And yeah, that was my first sort of experience into pro wrestling. Lots of squats. That was pretty much it. That was what killed me. Yeah, it was a very painful experience. But yeah, that was around about June 2019 first started.
How was it easy for you initially picking it up, or was it quite hard learning it? How did you find it early on?
It was very different than what I anticipated it was going to be. I watch wrestling now in a completely different way than what I did 3 years ago. I'm a lot more aware of where things should be, and you know, and you can sort of notice certain things now, where before it was just like you just watched it for the entertainment, where now I'm finding myself critiquing professional wrestlers. But yeah, it was harder than I expected, but easier than I expected in certain aspects. The sort of the energy of it is very hard. I didn't think it was going to be as taxing as far as like your energy output as it has been. and you do sort of climatize to it eventually. But it was just, it was a bit of an eye opener at first of how out of breath you get, and also as well, it's remembering where you need to be and things like that. That whilst being extremely fatigued, that can be very difficult. But you sort of, again, you can climatize towards that and get better as you go along, and I think I have. So, but yeah, that was probably the most difficult part, was just sort of remembering where you need to be, your footwork and things like that. And now it's just like riding a bike; you just know where you should be, how you turn, and things like that.
Within 4 months, because obviously you sent me a time frame of getting you starting that, you were in the ring for your debut in October 29 against BGS member Christy Quinlan, of course, who you've been friends with. So that's quite quick. That's quite quick getting in there for your debut.
It was. I really wasn't expecting it at all. It was a Thursday, so it was 2 days before the show. And I'd sort of expected to be a Rumble entrant in the show the following month, because I thought they're not just going to throw me in the deep end and work a match. And I got the notification on my phone, and my name was on there, and I thought, that's got to be a mistake. Like, it was one of those things where I was like, did I think I was ready? And, I had all these questions, and I rang my wife, and I was like, I'm wrestling on Saturday. And she was like, oh, well done. You must be doing really well. And looking back at the match now, it's horrific. It's really bad. And Christy was a godsend in that match. Absolutely got me through it. But yeah, it's still one of my fondest memories. Even as bad as the match was, it still sticks in my mind as like one of the best moments of my life.
That's cool, man. That's cool. Yeah, just also within that time and then into 2020, obviously pandemic. Now you utilized the pandemic, but how were you mentally not able to wrestle during that time? Did you cope with it?
Not really, no. I just sort of started to find my feet, because again, going back from between October and the March and lockdown, obviously it's only 5 months, but I wrestled like, I think 12 or 13 times in that time frame. So I was really starting to find my feet. And just before we went into lockdown, I think it was like a week before we had a show, and I had a singles match, and I just felt for the first time that I was really, really comfortable in the ring. The crowd were really starting to get behind me, and then the pandemic hit, and it just sort of felt like it was just sort of stop-start. And then Speaking Out happened. So the school we were at the time shut down. I didn't know when we were going back, because obviously initially we were told, oh, it's 2 weeks and we'll be back. And then that turned into 6 months of no wrestling. So during that time, it really hit me hard, because I didn't realize how good wrestling was making me feel. And it was sort of an outlet for my mental health as well, and being around people and talking and having that sort of human interaction. And it just turned into nothing. And yeah, it was a really bad time for me personally. Didn't enjoy it one bit, but coming out of lockdown, it was I had a completely different mind frame.
You did use the time effectively, though, mate, because you came up with the faction that now stands today, the Violent Gentleman Society, with yourself, Christy Quinlan, and KC Payne, another guy that you've come into business with. So, yeah, you did utilise your time, because you managed to formulate this faction, which is a fantastic faction, by the way.
Thank you very much. It was strange, because obviously after Speaking Out and stuff, like talking to my wife, I was like, I don't know if I want to go back, because I'm at an age now where, there's a lot of things that I don't really like to get involved in, sort of backstage stuff. Like I'm very much, I want to get there, say hi, wrestle, go home. I'm not really into, I don't really like that sort of stuff, and it sort of puts me on edge. And obviously it was one of those things where I thought, do I really want to go back into that environment? but it was my wife who taught me into it. She said, you've put a lot of time into it. Maybe start thinking about what direction you want to go in. And it started out initially nothing like it is now. We'd watch the Netflix series Hollywood, and it was based in like the sort of noir era of Hollywood. And I thought that'd be a really cool character, actually, sort of like a smarmy Hollywood actor who thinks he's better than everybody else. And I thought, yeah, that'd be pretty cool. And I started sort of putting together an idea of what I wanted to do with it. And then it just sort of manifested into what it is today, which is nothing like that at all. It's very much just a clean cut, all business kind of guy who hates everybody apart from the people he's associated with, and doesn't matter if you're a good guy or a bad guy, he's going to beat you up. There's no one's safe really with him. And then, I reached out to Christy first and basically said to him, I know you've not got a lot on, but I have this idea for a faction of this group of guys who, overlooked and not really seen as, don't have any potential. And we basically just take over wherever we go. And then I like the idea of having a third man. And KC, again, was someone who has ridiculous potential and wasn't really getting opportunities other than the odd appearance here and there. And he jumped at it. And that's basically how we come together.
Where did the group debut, Tommy?
First appearance as a group was at Wrestle Island in September of last year. I'd previously wrestled in an outdoor show for Pete I think it was in Birkenhead. It was like a summer festival. They had a match with Harley Hudson. And that's where I debuted the character of the Violent Gentleman. And we had Pete said it was the match of the day. We got fantastic reaction from the crowd. And it wasn't what I expected. Because again, I'd never really thought about wrestling a lady before. It's just something that never really crossed my mind. And but I knew how talented Harley was. So I thought, this could work in my favor. I'm twice the size of her, but she's probably twice as strong as me. So she threw me around that ring just as much as I did. And the crowd were really behind her, really hated me. And I thought this could work. But yeah, we got Pete messaged me after the show, said he was happy with my performance, and basically said, we want you on the next show. And I was over the moon with it. I'm someone who's lacked self-belief in myself, and if I have a bad day at the office, it tends to affect me for a long time. But coming out of that, I felt like on top of the world, and being given that opportunity at Wrestle Island, which is such a big show, I thought, I can do this. And so we went in and destroyed young Charlie Brennan and James Reed in the ring. And left them laying, and that's sort of set up where we are as far as the story with me and Charlie since that. But yeah, we've basically dominated since we started.
I've had the pleasure of commentating your matches at Superstar. We've done a few now with you on the bill. So how have you found Superstar? Obviously, we started out in Kirby, didn't we? We're now in Fazakerley. Bigger, the room's bigger, isn't it? But yeah, how's Superstar Pro been for you so far, Tommy? Because it's been a pleasure calling your matches. Obviously, we've got the Everton link as well. Obviously, your character. No, it's I think it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Thank you. Yeah, Superstar's been fantastic. It's been great to sort of hone my skills in there, and there's a lot of guys in there that I've wanted to work with. Connor Kleins. My match with him, I really, really enjoyed because it's funny, really, because when you're wrestling there with your close friends, you tend to hit twice as hard. It's really strange, and we really, really beat the crap out of each other that match. And you know, it was such a fun match to have because of our we're similar builds, and I'd never really wrestled someone with a similar build before, so I didn't really know what to expect. But Connor's an absolute pro, and you know, we really, really sort of gave it to each other. He got the win, unfortunately, on that occasion. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. My debut was against Alfie Brooks. Managed to get the W on that one, which was great to win on my debut. And I've had Rumble appearance, and then the debut of the Violent Gentleman Society Saturday just gone, which was fantastic. Really, really enjoyed the day.
I was lambasted on commentary by Mike Angus. He wasn't happy. He was not happy, but also I was wearing the shirt as well, which is obviously the proceeds are going to the Haemophilia Society because your son has that. And but fantastic. It's going to the charity, all the proceeds from that. But yeah, Mike wasn't happy with me on commentary, but I'll say it as it is.
Yeah, Mike needs to shut up. He's got a big mouth. He's no. With me and Mike, we've had a bit of history at Superstar Pro, especially in recent months. I debuted for TNT earlier on in the year, and I come out of that match not feeling great in my performance whatsoever. I really, really didn't enjoy. It's not that I didn't enjoy the match. I just really didn't think I performed very well. And Mike was the first one to sort of pull me to one side and say, "Listen, it's just one day. You know, it's not going to be like this all the time. You know, don't let it get to you." And gave me some really good advice. And then the following, I think it was 2 weeks later, I debuted for Superstar. And after the match, I got right in Mike's face and I said, "Is that what you wanted?" And yeah, and now that I've got my two lads in there, they can do it for me, so they can bully Mike instead. So I can concentrate on beating people up in the ring.
There's a certain amount of muscle with you guys, but I'll sort Angus out on the commentary. Don't worry about that. But yeah, I'd like to ask you now. Going back when you were a fan, when you were a youngster like myself, obviously we watched in the early '90s. So yeah, just who did you love? Who did you love to watch back in the days, man? And I know that's very broad. That's a broad question to ask, but yeah, man, just what drew you to wrestling as a kid?
Well, as I say, the first sort of instance I can remember is when it was on Sky One. I think it was Superstars. It used to show sort of highlights from different shows and stuff. But I wouldn't say I was like a fanatic at that point. It was definitely sort of the Attitude Era where I started getting pulled into it. A lot of my friends in school were talking about it and stuff, and I thought, oh yeah, I've not watched that for a while. So at the time we didn't have Sky, so my auntie used to record Raw for me and drop it off weekly. And I always, like, all my friends were big sort of Stone Cold fans, The Rock, Payne, Undertaker. But I was always drawn to Triple H, always. And I think it was the one match that in particular that always stuck with me, or one episode of Raw that always stuck with me, was the night when Jericho beat him for the WWF title. And then the title got reversed later on. Yeah. And it was the way he tricked Dale Hebner to reverse the decision and then fired him and then beat him up. I thought, oh my God, this guy's an absolute nutcase. And I just loved how smart he was and how he went about things, but he was so vicious in the way he attacked people. And then even then, when he was a face, like, the comedy stuff he did was fantastic. Like, he always, was up for making people laugh or being the butt of the joke as well. He never took himself too seriously in that regard. And he'd definitely be someone that, you say, who'd you like to sit in a room with and have lunch with? He'd definitely be that person that'd love an hour of his time just to pick his brain, because I can imagine I'd get so much knowledge from him in that time.
Look how he cultivated his character as well, because if you look at him in WCW before he came in '95, and then it was the Greenwich Blue Blood, wasn't it, and all that, and then into this ass kicking machine. But yeah, it just goes to show, doesn't it, how you can develop a character, from something totally different. And he found himself, didn't he?
That's it, and that's this character that I am at the moment is, it's still early days. There's so much that I can get from this, and it's starting to pay dividends a little bit because I'm starting to see more interest from people, and I'm starting to see the bookings come in. So we've still got a long way to go. There's still so many different things we've got to do. So, but no, I'm really excited for the future.
I'll go with the topic of factions now because you are the leader of a faction yourself, as we've spoken about. So, yes, some factions that you enjoyed watching as well. I thought that'd be a good one to ask.
No, absolutely, yeah. There was the obvious ones are obviously DX. I was never really a big NWO fan. I enjoyed them individually. Never really liked Hogan. Never been a Hogan fan. And that might get me lambasted on Twitter. But yeah, it was just never something that I never liked him. It was just, I don't know what it was. I just never gravitated towards him. Out of the three, I enjoyed Scott Hall's work the most. Because again, I don't want to go into the hundreds of members of NWO that he had. So, the core three, I think out of all of them, Scott Hall was, the one that I think, how was he not a world champion at least once? His work on the mic was fantastic. His look was great. He was a great face and a heel when he was Razor Ramon. And obviously, my condolences to his family as well. In passing last week, it was, I think it hit the wrestling world pretty hard. But yeah, I think DX were great. I enjoyed it when they were the four with the New Age Outlaws, X-Pac, Triple H. I even enjoyed the sort of 2000s run where I think Billy Gunn got kicked out and there was Tori and a few others. And, I really enjoyed them around that time. Evolution as well, their work. Obviously being a big Triple H fan, there seems to be a bit of a kind of, continuity there. But yeah, again, the way they set that up was great, with having two young lads who no one had heard of, really. They were doing bit parts for SmackDown and Raw, weren't really doing a lot. And then obviously to make them into the stars they are today, fantastic. But another faction that was quite short-lived, but I really enjoyed, was the Radicals. Really enjoyed, those four guys. The way they came in was so unique. I would have loved to have debuted for a company in that way. Sat in the crowd and then just sort of beating someone up. It was so new. But yeah, the time they were together, they were fantastic.
It's mad to think that, when the Radicals came in and then Eddie got injured, didn't he, pretty much straight away? Yeah. Did the frog splash, didn't he? Which he'd hit numerous, hundreds and hundreds of times. So it's like, oh no. But when he did come back, obviously he came in with China, didn't he? They did all that. And it's just mad to think they weren't really utilising WCW. All right, Benoit was getting into, main events and stuff. But it's just how WWE could just change with talent. It's just amazing, wasn't it, what they could do?
It's unreal. And again, you look at Malenko and Saturn and how technically gifted they were in the ring. You sort of had Benoit, who again was an unreal wrestler, absolute horrible human being, but his wrestling qualities were, you can't doubt them. Perry Saturn, Malenko now I think I appreciate a lot more. Given the amount of sort of stuff. He was an innovator. He changed a lot of, if anything, modern pro wrestling was based a lot around him, and what he did. And his brother as well was also fantastic. But yeah, I think with Eddie, he was just unreal, wasn't he? That title win against Brock Lesnar still sits in my memory as one of the best moments in WWE history. It was unreal. The crowd were so partisan as well that night. They really wanted Eddie to win, and getting that win, you could see how much it meant to him. But yeah, no, they were absolutely fantastic, all four of them.
What about maybe a couple of matches, Tom? A couple of matches that stand out for you? As a performer yourself now, as a wrestler yourself, maybe that sort of avenue with it. What would you say was two of your favourites? All three. I'll give you three. I'll give you three, actually. I'm restricting you here. I'll do a top three. Sorry.
That makes it a little bit more difficult. I'd probably say one of my favourite matches of all time was Benoit and Jericho, the ladder match. I think it was at Backlash. I think.
Or was it the Rumble? I've got a funny feeling it was Rumble 2001.
Yes,
So
I think
Rumble 2001.
Real that match was fantastic. Again, for a ladder match, they really utilised what they needed to. And then the walls of Jericho at the top of the ladder was just so innovative for what, never seen that before. I think I'm trying to think. You put me on the spot a little bit here.
I know it's hard.
Yeah. I really enjoyed Kenny Omega and Okada 2 more than the first one. I just loved how exhausted they both were, or how they played, how exhausted they were. And you could see towards the end of that match, both of them were just absolutely out on their feet. They could barely stand. And I do prefer a match to have some form of storytelling. Like, I'm not a big spot guy. As far as what I enjoy watching, I would much rather have something build over a certain length of time and then a big payoff. And rather than just sort of like spots and things that stick with me. I'm just trying to think now of a good example. But again, my mind's gone blank. Goes the way. Let me have I can't think. If anything comes into my head, we'll come back.
Yeah, we'll come back to it, mate. We'll come back to it. It's fine. Now, obviously, going forward with the Violent Gentleman Society, what bookings are coming up? Obviously, you're causing destruction everywhere you go. So, yeah, some upcoming shows for you guys and where the fans can find you around the northwest of England.
Yeah, so our next show is this coming Saturday. We're in Southport for the Kingdom of Wrestling. Myself and Casey Payne are facing off against the Freak Show. Really excited for that match. Really clash of styles. Those two guys I followed closely over the last few months. And yeah, the fans there are going to be in for a bit of a battle with that one, I think. And then after that, we've got Superstar Pro Wrestling again, and that is the 12th, 14th of May, I think it is. That is also in Fazak. And then after that, May 29th, we're back at Wrestle Island for This Is the Way. Yet to be confirmed, apart from we're all entrants into the Rumble match, which I am actually able to select my entry number. Beating Charlie.
That's a good one. That will you go in first? Will you go in first to make a statement, or are you going to be dead last coming in there? That is the question. You like a reign of terror. You like punishment.
Who knows? The way I see it is that I've got to find a place in that match that, is going to be a benefit to me. Whether that is first, whether it's last, whether it's slap bang in the middle, wherever I can see an opportunity where I can think, I can win this, then that's where exactly I'll place myself.
Now I'm going to change topic. Now we're not going to speak about yesterday's result. That was an absolute abomination. We did an Everton away from home. It's just not happening. We were better away from home when there was no fans in. We were. But I know, obviously, you're a season ticket holder at Goodison. How are you finding it with Frank Lampard? I know it's been years and years of mismanagement with the team. We've spent a lot of money on players that just aren't up to par. What are your thoughts and feelings? Because you go the games. You're there all the time in the Gladys there, mate. So I'd like to get your perspective on how it is under Frank Lampard's tenure.
It's been a bit sort of up and down. I still believe that we should be playing with a 3 in midfield rather than a 2. I think that's a big weakness of ours. I think it's difficult because, again, I'm not a football manager, but I think if I can see that, surely you can. But yeah, I think Frank's been left with a club that is in complete disarray. There's no play style. The players just aren't good enough. And I think if he is given time, it could be a successful appointment. My main concern is that these players just down tools again, which they've been known to do in the past. But I'm quietly positive that it is long term going to be a success, but it depends if the club give him that time.
He's a born winner, as a player. That we've seen it time and time again. I do think it's early doors. I mean, his press conference yesterday, he doesn't hold no punches, does he? Do you know what I mean? He will say it like it is, which I think I understand that. I think it's just the goals were leaking, Tom, at the back. Yeah. Five against Spurs, 4 against Palace. Like, I've never known it, to happen so frequently. I know a lot of people are saying it's the defensive lineup. Obviously, we've got no Mina. He's constantly out injured, but when he is there, there's a bit of solidarity. But I just think Ben Godfrey, he's been out that long. You can't put it on Ben Godfrey. He's come back from injury. That's the problematic area. But I do agree with you. We need 3 in centre mid.
Yeah, I think looking at yesterday's result compared to Thursday's result, the midfield were dropping and covering on Thursday and really making it hard for Newcastle to break through. Where yesterday there was far too much space between the midfield and the defence, and that was the difference. You need that extra body, and if it's not there, then that's why we play so open. Even with 5 at the back, it was just so open and just didn't look good at all. But it's one of those things. I think, given time and getting his signings in, depending on where we are, if we do go down, I dread to think what condition the club would be in. But at the same time, I'm hopeful that we will stay up. But yeah, I think if we do stay up next season, you'll see a completely different side.
What about Anthony Gordon, mate? He's been one of the shining lights, hasn't he? To be fair.
I think that's another big problem that we have. He's such a great player, but to put all of our hopes on a 21-year-old is extremely unfair. And I think that the club really needs to look at itself. And again, a lot of people are calling for Coleman to be dropped and things. And, but my thing with Coleman, and I say it to people who sit around me, when they're moaning at him, it's not his fault, that he's still playing. The club, since he broke his leg, that was nearly 5 years ago, they've still not replaced it. And that in itself is, well, what do you expect? And Nathan Patterson, I'm sure he's one for the future, but those signings in January are starting to look a little bit, why did we sign them if they're not ready now? But yeah, so I think summer's going to be massive for us.
How was it in the Gladys against Newcastle? The crowd as a whole, actually, was that one of the best atmospheres?
I think Leeds at home was great. I couldn't talk for a good 2 or 3 days after that game. It was loud. But yeah, Newcastle was completely different. It was funny because Newcastle fans have been quite vocal over the last couple of years, especially since we've had Jordan Pickford, and they've created this sort of fictional rivalry in their heads. So they sold out their end for the first time in a long time for a midweek game. So they were very vocal, brought out their inflatable dinosaurs, and the irony being that Pickford wasn't even playing. So that was hilarious. And then, grown men bringing inflatable dinosaurs to a match, conceding a 99th minute goal to a 10-man Everton was icing on the cake. But yeah, when that goal went in, we were singing afterwards, and I could not understand what song people were singing. It was just noise. It was like a bubble of noise, and I was having to really concentrate trying to hear what song people were singing because it was just so loud. And yeah, I've not heard it that loud ever in my life, and I've been going since I can remember. It was unreal. But I'm just hoping, as I say, between now and the end of the season, that the home form is a little bit better, and that's the difference. I think for us to stay up now, between now out of the 11 games we've got left, we need to win 4 and nick a couple of draws. And I think that's been a big problem for us this season, is that we haven't drawn a lot of games.
No, we haven't.
We either win or we lose, and teams around us are either picking up a point or 3 points. So we really need to start picking up those points, whether it is a draw or a win. We need to just stop losing, because I'd rather lose 1-0 and go for it than lose 5-0 and be shite. So it's there's got to be that balance for the team, and I think long term something needs to change. Whether that is an extra man in midfield or trying some of the kids out, whatever it is. But yeah, it's not looking good at the moment. But I'm hopeful that we will stay up.
It's like absolutely. So yeah, just I've known it this bad, like yourself, in the 90s. All these younger fans now. So hold on a minute. Well, the team was better back then. I don't necessarily believe that. But I know the Premier League's obviously a lot stronger now than it was back then. I take people's points, but I think I've seen it worse than this in the 90s. I still maintain that.
Well, I don't know. I don't know myself. It's scary at the moment, and I think because of the quality of the league and anybody can beat anybody on the day, it could leave us in a very, very precarious position. So I'm just hoping that those lads in that squad have got the mentality to at least try and push us through in these last few games, just to push us out of trouble. We've still got games in hand, but we've got to win them, and that's the important.
I think that's more. I've said this. I think that's more pressure. Knowing everyone's like, well, you've got 3 in hand on various teams. That hold on a minute, it's the pressure. It's the mentality of the players. I say it's not a dead cert. That's people on the outside looking in. It's like us talking about other clubs. You know your own club. You know how it works. Like, do you know what I mean? But Burnley and Watford, they're all integral to games, but they're 2 that stick out that we've got to get something out of. And Leicester are hit and miss. I think we can get something against Leicester as well. Leicester haven't been great this year, have they? I know he's had issues in defence. Rodgers, I get that. They've had a lot of injuries, but there's games there that they have to win, because there's games on paper, we're likely to struggle, especially if we're away.
100%. And I think, at Goodison, we've got Man United, Chelsea in the next couple of months. So, they're coming thick and fast. And, I think on our day, we can beat United. United are fragile just as much as we are, in a sense. They've just got that little bit of quality that can win them a game. Chelsea, again, it just depends how the crowd react. Because they're not going to have any fans. So, that in itself is a bonus. So there's no reason we can't go out and at least get a point from that game. But yeah, Burnley, Watford, Leicester, they're the 3 that I would say we need to be taking maximum points from. But the issue being is that Burnley's away and Watford are away. So, it just depends how the team go into the games, really. And hopefully we can come out with some wins.
Fingers crossed, mate. And because you go every week, you go week in, week out. I've got a lot of, that's good that you do that you're there. Regardless, mate, win, lose or draw, you're at Goodison. And I tip my hat to you there, because it's not been easy. It's not been easy at all. Tommy, where can the viewers find you? Plug some socials, plug the store, plug the VGS store as well, if you would like, mate.
Yeah. Of course. So all of my socials, I'm on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, and that's Tommy Jackson PW. We have, as you mentioned earlier, we've got a shirt running at the moment with which is our Blood Edition shirt, which is this one but in red. And we're currently donating all profits from that to the Haemophilia Society for World Haemophilia Day on the 17th of April. Once that's closed, we're going to be releasing individual shirts for us. So keep your eye out for those. And that's on Shopify. Just search Violent Gentleman Society and it'll bring the page up. And yeah, but thank you very much for having me on.
No problem, mate. Anytime. I look forward to In Your Scouts in May as well. The Violent Gentleman Society will be in action, I am sure. And yes, I will be fully backing you. I will be fully backing you at the behest of the Mad Dog Mike Angus, who is on commentary duty. He's not on ring announcing duty on those Saturday shows in the afternoon.
Look forward to that. He's he deserves a bit of a ticking off. He's always too bad.
I'll try and keep him quiet. My guest from Liverpool in Merseyside, fellow Evertonian, the leader of the Violent Gentleman Society. It is none other than Tommy Jackson. And I will see you in May, my friend. And thank you for coming on to Stu's Wrestling Podcast today.
Thank you very much, Stu. Take care.
That was a fantastic interview right there with Tommy Jackson. It was a pleasure getting him on, and I've had the pleasure also of commentating on his matches at Superstar Pro Wrestling, and it'll be good to see going forward where the VGS go alongside Christy, Quinlan and KC Payne. A big thank you to Chris Dutton for editing the show as always. A big thank you to Mike Angus for the intro. A big thank you to Evade Escape for already know in the intro and the outro. Thank you for your music, lads. Appreciate it. And we will see you very soon for episode 112 of Stu's Wrestling Podcast.